Good morning, everyone. It is wonderful to be together in this way, even though we can't be together physically, being in a state of lockdown or locked in. Vertrou ek regtig dat ons ten spyte daarvan nog steeds sommer net lekker sal kan saam kuier vanmôre en ek vertrou dat dit ook vir jou geseënde tyd sal wees. Nou, ek het sommer net gedink hierdie week aan die coronavirus en hoe dit ons lewens raak en vir baie van ons is dit waarskynlik soos 'n storm. En dis 'n storm wat ons lewe ontwrig en tot 'n meerdere of 'n mindere mate beïnvloed. Ek dink die een ding wat ons seker moet sê is dat nie een van ons kan sê dat die coronavirus ons nie geraak het nie, of dat jy nie daardeur beïnvloed word of is nie. So ek het gedeelte die week op my hart wat kom uit Markus 4 and we're going to be reading from Mark chapter 4 at verse 35, and it also relates to a storm. And I would like to read to you at verse 35. It says, "On the same day, when evening had come, he said to them, 'Let us cross over to the other side.' Now when they had left the multitude, they took him along in the boat as he was. And other little boats were also with him. And a great windstorm arose, and the waves beat into the boat, so that it was already filling. But he was in the stern, asleep on a pillow. And they awoke him and said to him, 'Teacher, do you not care that we are perishing?' Then he arose and rebuked the wind, and said to the sea, 'Peace, be still.' And the wind ceased, and there was a great calm. But he said to them, 'Why are you so fearful? How is it that you have no faith?' And they feared exceedingly, and said to one another, 'Who can this be, that even the wind and the sea obey him?'" Now, it's interesting. We find various kinds of storms. And in this particular instance, we read in verse 37 about a windstorm. This was a physical storm. It was a physical threat to the disciples. And when we think about a physical or an external storm, it's a storm or something or a situation that we don't have any control over. There was no way that the disciples could change or influence the wind or the waves, and the storm was raging around them. En hierdie storm is bedreigend, it is threatening in such a way that the waves were crashing into their boat. It was coming over the sides of their boat and it was starting to fill up. So wat ons sien met hierdie tipe van storm is dat dis 'n storm wat naby is. Dis nie meer 'n storm wat net op die horison is nie. Dis nie net 'n storm waarvan ek en jy gehoor het nie. Maar dis 'n storm wat my en jou lewe raak. Dit kom baie naby aan ons. Dit kom selfs tot partymal binne in ons huis. En dit ontstel ons en dit maak ons dat ons voel dat ons onveilig is and we feel threatened and we feel unsafe and we realize that we don't have any control over this. There's nothing that we can do to stop or to prevent the storm. But there's also another kind of storm. And that's the storm that's inside us. The storm in our hearts. Internal storms. And in that storm, we find fear and we find anxiety and we find unsettledness and disturbed hearts. En ek en jy beleef hierdie turbulensie in ons harte en ons beleef hierdie deurmekaar en hierdie vrees en hierdie benoudheid en hierdie onsekerheid. En dis 'n storm wat in ons harte woed. Dis nie meer 'n storm wat net daar buite is nie. Dis 'n storm waarmee ek en jy hier binne in ons hart en in ons gedagtes mee gekonfronteer word. Nou is interessant dat ons lees daar in vers 38 dat Jesus is aan die slaap en the next moment the disciples decided to wake him. Probably because they thought, well, why doesn't he help? Why doesn't he do anything? You know, maybe he must get a bucket, maybe he must just get wet and come and help us. He can't be inactive or passive in this process. He must come and help us. Of miskien was hulle net benoud of angs angstig en het hulle behoefte gehad om Jesus te begin soek en in hulle desperaatheid het hulle na hom begin soek. En baie keer ook in ons storms, dan kom ons op 'n plek wat ons bewus raak en 'n behoefte ontwikkel om te sê, waar is Jesus? En ons wil graag Jesus wakker maak en ons wil graag Jesus by ons kry en ons het regtig net 'n behoefte om sy teenwoordigheid te beleef. En so ontdek ons eintlik dat daar verskillende vorme van teenwoordigheid is. There is what I call a passive presence. And a passive presence is where somebody is present, but they're not active. They're not doing anything. They are not responding. They're not engaging. They are not addressing the situation. They are there, but they're not actively engaging with the situation. And then on the other side, there is what I would like to call active presence. That's the kind of presence where somebody is present, but not only present, they engage with the situation. Hulle raak betrokke. Hulle raak aktief. Hulle doen iets in die omstandighede. En ons sit met hierdie aktiewe teenwoordigheid. Nou wanneer ek en jy beleef dat daar 'n vorm van onaktiewe teenwoordigheid is. When we are confronted with inactive presence, it leads to frustration and questioning and it's interesting to note that the disciples, they asked a question. They said, do you not care? Do you not care? And it's interesting that question was not, can't you stop the storm? The question was not about Jesus' ability, but it was about the attitude of Jesus. Do you not care? Do you not care? And the real issue for the disciples and many times for us when we are confronted with these storms is not about God's ability. It's not about the ability that Jesus has to calm or not to calm the storm. We're not asking him and saying, well, can't you calm the storm? Some of us will accept that he can calm the storm or that he can help and he can, get rid of some of the water. As ek dink aan die disippels het hulle waarskynlik maar net die verwagting gehad dat hy 'n emmer moes vat en begin water uitskep. En hulle het geweet hy kan help. But they were questioning his attitude. Hulle het sy gesindheid bevraagteken. Gee hy regtig om? Of hulle het eintlik gesê, gee jy nie om nie? En dit klink eintlik meer soos 'n stelling as 'n vraag. It wasn't as if they said, don't you care? They were making a statement about his inactive presence. Nou wanneer ek en jy met hierdie kwessie gekonfronteer word, when we are struggling with not Jesus' ability, but Jesus' attitude, when we're struggling with that question can only be answered through relationship, by knowing him. Not only knowing his ability, but also knowing his attitude. En ek dink een van die plekke waar ons dit seker die duidelikste sien, is in Romeine 8 vers 32, waar Paulus skryf, hy sê, God, or he, wat die Vader is, who did not spare his own son, but delivered him up for us all, how shall he not with him also freely give us all things? En Paulus vra eintlik die vraag, as ons dink oor God se gesindheid en dit wat ons dalk beleef as God se onaktiwiteit, dat hy nie betrokke is nie, dat hy nie die probleem aanspreek nie. En Paulus sê, hoe kan ons dit dink, hoe kan ons dit sê, as die Vader nie eers sy eie seun gespaar het nie, maar hom gegee het? Hoe kan, as God die ekstreme alreeds gegee het, hoe kan ons enigstens nog daaroor wonder, of God betrokke is en of hy omgee? Natuurlik gee hy om. He does care. He already demonstrated that to us by giving us his own son. Ek wil jou vanmôre bemoedig. Dalk worstel jy met die vraag, is gee die Here nie om nie? Gee die Here nie om oor my finansiële posisie nie, gee die Here nie om oor my gesin nie, gee die Here nie om oor my loopbaan nie, gee die Here nie om oor my gesondheid nie. I want to encourage you this morning, God does care. It's interessant as ons nou kyk na die disciples, they had a very clear expectation in verse 38. They knew, or they already decided, that they are gonna perish. They're gonna die at sea today. This is it. They've connected all the dots, and the only outcome, die enigste uitkoms wat hulle in hierdie situasie kon sien en voorsien, was dat hulle sou sterf. Dit was hulle verwagting. En baie keer beland ek en jy in 'n storm, en ons maak eintlik klaar die sommetjies, and we already decide, and we say that this is gonna be the outcome. This is what is going to happen. There's no other option, there's no other choice. The other thing that they had an expectation about is Jesus helping them. And they wanted him to get involved and get a bucket and start bucketing out the water and get wet and, just participate in this problem, in this issue. And then we see something about Jesus' active presence in verse 39. He demonstrates his authority. And we see his unlimited and ultimate authority. He rebukes the wind and the storm settles. How is that for active presence with ultimate, unlimited authority? And when we are confronted with that, as ons dit sien en beleef, then it becomes a matter of external control versus internal influence. Kan ek net gou iets daaroor sê? Miskien besef ek en jy dat ons nie die eksterne omstandighede kan beheer nie. Ons weet ons is nie in beheer nie. Ons weet eintlik ons is in 'n posisie waar ons oorweldig is deur hierdie storm. Hierdie storm is groter. The storm is bigger than us. We don't have any control over it. We cannot influence it. We cannot change it. But the thing that we can change, and the thing that we do have influence over, is internally. Ek hou van wat Bill Johnson vroeër die week gesê het. Hy sê faith is not ignoring the storm, but not allowing the storm a place of influence. Faith is not ignoring the storm. Dis nie om te sê die storm bestaan nie, but it's not allowing the storm a place of influence. Jy weet, ek en jy het die keuse om 'n storm 'n plek van invloed te gee of nie. Dis 'n verskriklike belangrike keuse wat ons moet maak. En dis iets waaroor ek en jy wel beheer het. Dis iets wat ek en jy wel kan kies. En dan is dit interessant wat Jesus volgende doen. He reveals two things in their hearts. The first thing is fear, and the second one is no fear. You see, sometimes when our faith in the storm is greater or bigger than our faith in Jesus, the result can only be fear. When our faith in the storm is bigger than our faith in Jesus, the result will always be fear. You see, faith and fear cannot exist alongside one the other. Ons het of vrees, of ons het geloof. Waar daar vrees is daar nie geloof nie. En waar daar geloof is, kan daar nie meer vrees wees nie. En weet jy, it is only peace in Jesus, or peace can only come by faith in Jesus. Dis slegs deur geloof in Jesus dat daar waarlik vrede kan kom, dat daar regtig iets in ons hart kan settle. Miskien is daai vrees in jou hart, en dan wil ek jou vanmôre aanmoedig om te kies en toe te laat, om te glo, om in Jesus te glo. As ons dan kyk na vers 41, dan lees ons, they feared exceedingly. Jy sien, die eksterne storm is nou verby. Die storm het nou gaan lê. It has settled. But yet, They were fearing exceedingly. They were fearing exceedingly. Die vrees wat daar was vir die storm is nou verby, maar daar was nou 'n ander, 'n groter vrees. En dis wanneer ek en jy die een ontmoet wat autoriteit het oor daardie intimiderende storm in ons lewe. That's when we discover and we meet the one that has the ultimate authority, that has unlimited authority over those external storms. Kan jy jou voorstel, die storm was vir my en jou intimiderend, dit was intimiderend vir die disippels. En dan ontdek jy iemand wat beheer het oor hierdie geweldige intimiderende storm. En dan beleef ons eintlik 'n oorweldigende vrees. Nie noodwendige vrees om bang te wees nie, maar 'n bewondering. It comes to an awe as ons besef wie is in beheer van selfs my en jou grootste storm. Is interessant dan verder in vers 41. Nadat ons ontdek het wie Jesus is, dan lei dit eintlik onafwendbaar. It leads to a question. It leads to a question about identity. And we may also ask, who can this be? En dis my gebed vir elkeen van ons, dat ons in hierdie tyd, wanneer ons gekonfronteer word met storms, dat ons ook die vraag sal vra, who can this be? En dat ek en jy Jesus selfs nog beter sal leer ken. Dalk ken jy hom reeds lank, maybe you know him well, but that you would know him in a new way. You see, knowing not only his ability, but also his attitude is key. Who we believe he is has a radical influence or impact on what we believe. Understanding who he is and knowing him will determine what we are prepared to believe. And maybe you are fine and you accept that Jesus or God has the ability to change the storm. But maybe you are questioning his attitude. Don't you care? And I want to assure you today that God cares. And that he has the ultimate authority over every storm that we might be confronted by or with. Maybe you are in a storm this morning. And maybe it's not only an external storm. Maybe it's not only the waves on the outside and the water filling up and the situation in your house that is changing and in your finances or whatever the case might be. Maybe it's not only an external storm. Maybe there's even a bigger storm that's raging in your heart. Fear, anxiety, and unsettledness that's in your heart. It's my prayer this morning that the same God that can settle the storm at sea will also settle the storms in our hearts. And maybe you're questioning his attitude. Maybe it's difficult for you and it feels as if God does not care. Maybe you have fear and no faith in your heart. Maybe you have allowed the storm to influence and gave it a place in your heart. And you started to fear. I would like you, or us, to really trust God in this time, to reveal something fresh and something new about his attitude and about his identity. That we would discover how much he loves us, the one that sent his son to die for you and to die for me. Why would he not care today? Let's pray together. Father, thank you. I want to ask you, Lord, that you would come and just settle our hearts today. Lord, despite storms that might be raging in finances, storms that might be raging in relationships, storms that are raging in our hearts full of fear and no faith, I pray, Lord, that you would come and that you would rebuke those storms, that you would settle our hearts, that you would fill us with faith, and Lord, that fear would go. I pray, Lord, that we would no longer question your attitude, but that we would also see your ability to change and to provide. I pray that we would sense something about your active presence and how much you care. I pray your protection over each and every one of us. In Jesus' name, amen. Ek hoop dat jy 'n mooi dag het en dat die storms wat daar dalk in jou lewe mag wees, dat dit sal stil word en dat daar vrede in jou hart sal wees en dat jy nie hierdie storm 'n plek van invloed in jou hart sal gee nie. Maar dat jy Jesus se omgee sal beleef en sal sien. Amen.